I'm out there teaching about owning your career, owning your life, being intentional, following your dreams, and then I let fear hold me back and I don't move to another country that I've always been wanting to, I don't get into cycling I've always wanted to, I don't, do XYZ, then am I living my true values? Am I living in alignment with my brand and what I'm saying?
Our brain is definitely wired for safety and comfort, which means anxiety and fear can sometimes really feel easy to feel because our brain is fairly simple in its wiring to kind of like run from the saber-toothed tiger, except we don't have saber-toothed tigers anymore. We just have this like life that we're trying to live that is, to be honest, it's just too much.
The most growth in life happens when we get outside of our comfort zone, and we achieve the biggest things when we overcome our fears. And that's what courage really is.
Welcome to Courage is Built Here, the podcast. I'm Justine Froelker, licensed professional counselor, author, speaker, and corporate trainer. Here, we bring my Courage is Built Here curriculum to life and community. Each week, I invite a guest to walk one of the 5 courageous pathways with me through authentic, sometimes tough, sometimes hilarious conversations. No performance, no polish, just real people practicing real courage with grit, grace, and a whole lot of love. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Courage is Built Here podcast. Today, we have Pathway 1, Feel It All, how to feel our feelings and not be our feelings. So Pathway 1 it's twofold, okay? We always begin with our values, and then we, of course, talk about feelings. We talk about emotional well-being, basically. And so we begin with values because if you don't know what your guiding lights are, if you can't name what your values are, you can't live them out. Who are you? Who were you created to be? Who do you want to be? Not who your family of origin says, not who your fear tells you you are, not who the world tells you you're supposed to be. Who are you? How do you love? How do you lead? How do you show up for others? What matters most to you? As we'll talk about in today's episode, like, what do you want to be known for? Like, when people think about you or talk about you, what do they think and say? So we have to have clarity of values in order to feel well. You cannot feel well, or feel well. The emphasis can be on either word or both words without your deep roots of who you are, of your values. Of course, Pathway 1, we talk a lot about emotions too. We talk about how there's a lot of different kinds of emotions. We talk about that emotions are not good or bad. They just are. Of course, there are some emotions that are more fun than others. Some of us grew up with only certain emotions being allowed in our household. Our brain is definitely wired for safety and comfort, which means anxiety and fear can sometimes really feel easy to feel because our brain is fairly simple in its wiring to kind of like run from the saber-toothed tiger, except we don't have saber-toothed tigers anymore. We just have this like life that we're trying to live that is, to be honest, like it's just too much. And technology has changed it. And we have to-do lists that aren't getting done. And we have a news cycle that never ends. And we have access to it all the time. We have access to everyone's opinions about everything. And the brain will simplify that by putting people in categories, by judging, by making sure it'll do everything in its power to feel safe and comfortable, to feel not vulnerable. And what the brain does in order to not feel those things is it just makes up stories. It makes up stories about who we are. It makes up stories about who other people are. So we have to talk about emotional well-being. We have to talk about there's a lot of different kinds of emotions. You can feel more than one of them at the same time, even the opposing emotions. Your emotions are signals, they're signs, they're symptoms that something's up, that something's amiss, that something's great, that maybe you're living not into your values or into your values, right? And in today's episode, we talk a lot about fear. And we talk a lot about our values. And so my friend Andy Storch is here. I got connected to Andy, I think through one of our other mutual friends. No, I think he connected me with Lauren. And so I was on Andy's podcast a while back. Andy is a keynote speaker, personal brand and leadership trainer. So he's in much the same space that I am in. And I was on his podcast. He referred me to a retreat that he felt like would be helpful for me. That was great. He does great community building things with facilitators and keynote speakers that I love being a part of. And so like, he is just a wealth of knowledge. And I love his storytelling in this episode, especially how he talks about like courage includes fear. We just have to move through it. So I hope you loved the episode. I did very, very much. And let's welcome Andy to the podcast. All right. Welcome, Andy, to the Courage is Built Here podcast. Thank you.
Justine, are you
Yeah.
editing this? Justine.
But my producers have been told to edit very little because authenticity is what it's about.
Oh, here we go. All right. So I'm already messing up names. Justine, thank you so much for having me on. I am so excited to be here.
I love you. That's awesome. All right. Are you ready for your first question that we begin everyone with?
No, I'm not ready, but I'm here. So let's do it.
I mean, that's courage. So there you go.
Yeah. I'm
All
always
right.
ready.
So when you think about courage, most especially through the lens of what I call pathway 1, which is feel it all, which includes our values, work, and emotional well-being, is there a story or a moment that comes up for you?
Oh, there's so many things. First and foremost, I mean, I consider you to be one of the foremost experts I know on this topic of courage, but I've studied this quite a bit as well. And one thing I learned from a mentor early on is that courage, a lot of people think of courage as like living without fear or something, right? But courage is really more recognizing fear and then taking action anyway and doing something that's maybe outside of your comfort zone, that maybe you're scared of, recognizing that and doing it anyway. And what I think is interesting, connecting that with the emotional pathway, is that really to have courage and to overcome our fears, we have to connect with our emotions to the fact that we are afraid of something, right? To recognize that, be honest with ourselves that like, oh, I see this opportunity, whether it's a new job, a new project, a fitness challenge, posting something on social media, whatever. And I'm scared of what might happen if I do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And how I would connect that back to my own life is that I grew up, I was a very shy kid growing up. And one thing I realized later on as I went through like a personal development journey in my 30s, I read the book Mindset, New Psychology of Success by Dr. Carol Dweck. It absolutely changed my life because I realized I had grown up with a very fixed mindset. Didn't mean I didn't achieve at certain things, right? I got good grades. I got into the only university I wanted to go to, thankfully, with a full academic scholarship. But I quit a lot of other things because I was so afraid of failure and rejection as well. I don't think I talked to any girls in high school, maybe a couple, but I was so afraid of rejection, and I didn't try things that I was interested in because I was so afraid of failure. And when I read that book, it flipped a switch for me, and I committed, that combined with a couple other books and things that I read and listened to, that really pushed me to say, you know what, the most growth in life happens when we get outside of our comfort zone, and we achieve the biggest things when we overcome our fears. And that's what courage really is. And most of the people I admire got to where they are because they started in a place where something was scary and then they did it anyway. And so I committed after that to doing scarier things and getting outside my comfort zone. And since then, that was 2016. I've changed careers. I've started my own business. I've started 3 podcasts. I've published 2 books. I've started a conference. I've moved my family from Florida to Spain. The list goes on. I've gotten, since I moved to Barcelona, where I am now, I've gotten really big into cycling, which means going out and riding tougher and tougher routes with like people who I consider to be much stronger or more talented than me. And every time I'm a little bit afraid, but I know that if I do the scary thing, I'm taking a risk that I might fail. And by the way, I also like, when you look at that, why are we so afraid to fail? Why are we so afraid of rejection? At the core, it's really just because we're afraid. We think other people are going to laugh at us and judge us if we fail at these things, right? But if we put that aside and say it's actually not a big deal, most people are not really thinking about us; they're thinking about themselves. If they are judging us and laughing at us, that's their problem, not
It says
mine.
more about them.
Yeah, it says more about this. So I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to try, and that allowed me to do, like I said, publishing my first book and putting myself out there as an expert in career development when. I may not consider myself that, but I can do it. And I can say, either this is going to be really successful or I'm going to learn a lot from it. And even if nobody buys this book, but my children get to one day say, hey, my dad wrote a book, then I can be really proud of that. I can be happy about that. And now I'm so, by the way, I listed all the things I've done that sound successful. I've failed at many things as well. and they weren't as scary, because I've built this muscle over the last 9 years of like, I'm going to keep trying and doing things, even if they're scary, because I know when I get outside of my comfort zone, that's when I grow and that's when I learn
Yeah.
the most. But it really starts at the very beginning with just recognizing and being honest about your emotions and what you're afraid of and if it's a legitimate fear or not.
That's so true. I mean, because you named a lot of those are really huge things, like
Yeah.
running your own business, multiple podcasts, books, moving
Yeah.
your family, like, those
Yeah.
are huge things, and so,
Yeah.
I love that you said that you kinda you work out the muscle so that, like, every risk that we take in the name of courage, which means you feel the fear and you do something anyways, you take some step forward anyways, it builds that muscle up. Except I love that you said, like, you build that muscle even in the times that it actually didn't work out great, or it was
Yeah.
really hard to make that choice.
Right. We learn from those responses. And by the way, I'm still not entirely great at this. I think my biggest fear, I'm a very much a people person, a people pleaser. I shy away from confrontation. I think back to like my biggest fears and paralysis in life. And by the way, I've overcome cancer as well. Like I've had health challenges, etc. Even that I wasn't as scared of as confrontation with other people. Like that's
Yeah,
what really paralyzes me. But there have been times when I said like I'm terrified to go have this conversation with this person, to give them feedback, to accept feedback, to address
yeah,
a major friction, but I'm going to go do it shaking all the way. And then I do it. And then and it doesn't always work out that great, but I'm glad that I did because
yeah.
we have to do those things,
Mhm,
to have the courage to have those conversations if we're going to progress in life.
mhm. That huge long list of things that you named, like, is there one that sticks out that is you had the most fear about and you still moved through it, and how did you move through it? Or are they all just kinda like, "Oh, no, it's all, like, freaking scary because that's just living courageously."
They were all a little bit scary. I hope this doesn't sound, too arrogant or anything, but like I have really leaned into this concept of shifting my mindset so much that it's hard. I don't think of those things as scary anymore. I
Okay.
just think of them as
Ooh.
like calculated risks, right? Like, oh, I did this
Yeah.
thing. And it's more about, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of money. I'm going to put this thing out there. And I don't even think anymore about like, okay, what are people going to think
Yeah.
if this doesn't go well, if this fails? Like I said, I still have those moments. It's more
Sure.
about personal interactions, like, oh, should I send this message in
Yeah.
this group, or should I call this person and say this thing? And
Mm,
there's probably still things that I avoid because I'm afraid of it or something like that. But a lot of those bigger things,
mhm.
I'm sure I had fears around. I'm always nervous. Like publishing the books, especially my first book
Yeah.
called Own Your Career, Own Your Life. I published in November 2020, so 5 years ago. Um, there's always a fear that people are going to pick it up and go,
Mhm.
"Well, this is garbage. Like, who
Uh-huh.
who are you to write this book?" And I think I got like one or two star review from somebody. And it
I
was
was
just
just
like,
gonna ask you, do you read your reviews, and which ones do you remember? Because I remember, like, my best-selling book, my
yeah,
award-winning book, what's the review
yeah,
I remember? The one-star one.
yeah.
So
But
dumb.
it's what I come back. Somebody else pointed this out to me a long time ago. Like, if you ever need a little help with that, go on Amazon and go to the Harry Potter book series by J.K. Rowling
Yeah.
and look at all the one-star reviews from people that are just like, "Yeah, this book does not do it for me." I mean, seriously, like
That's a great activity to do.
the most popular books of all
All
time, and of
time.
course,
Yeah.
there are still people that are like, "This is garbage. I don't like this at all." Fine, like that's you can't please everybody. It's just
Nope.
not possible.
You will
Now, you have
never
to be
please
open to
everybody.
feedback. If enough people say,
Correct.
Justine, this book doesn't really hit the
Right.
mark or whatever," but I mean, even then, like you put it out there, right? You gave
Right.
it a shot, and then we learn from it and move on. But yeah, I had one. It was really funny. There were two. For my first book, I've been very lucky to have a network that supported me, and I've
Yeah.
gotten I think 300 something
You have an
reviews on there,
incredible
whatever.
community. Yeah.
And I think there's only two somewhat negative reviews.
Okay.
One of them I thought was really fun. They both were funny because one, what I did when I wrote my book is I took all the learning I did from all these other books and people, I put that in a framework that worked for me, and then I
Yeah.
taught it in my book. I
Uh,
never pretended to invent any of the stuff. I
yeah.
always give credit to anybody and everybody I learned from.
Yeah.
And somebody said like, "Oh, this book is just like the same old stuff. The only value is the bibliography in the back to like the other 30 books that he referenced." And I was like, "Well, that's great. So the value is to go read all these other books instead of mine."
Instead of mine.
And then
Oh,
yeah, and then the other one was really funny. It was this is like old wine in a new bottle or something like that. And I sent it to people and they're like, actually, that sounds pretty good. Like that sounds,
Uh-huh. I think so. I literally, if you ever have like 2 minutes, so
yeah,
my one traditionally published book, 100 Devotions
yeah.
for Kids Dealing with Anxiety, it
Oh
won an
yeah.
award. It's literally my best
Mm,
reviewed book. Like, and but one of the early reviewers, it's this man who does a
yeah,
video review. I
yeah,
think he gave me 2 stars or 3 stars. I can't
yeah.
remember, but he literally just like thumbs through it and he's like, "It feels pretty good in my hands. Smells good.
hmm
Oh, there's some good spots for you to write notes." I mean, I think maybe you should get it. I didn't read it though.
It's a
I
video
mean,
review.
it is seriously hilarious,
Yeah.
and I was like, "What motivates someone to do that?"
You know, people, and while we're on topic of reviews, a couple of years ago, I was researching a camping trip with my family, and I was looking at
Uh-huh.
campsites, and somebody put like a 2-star review, and it said, the campsite's great, but it rained the whole time I was there. And I just thought,
Yep,
like, you just can't please everybody. There's nothing you could
correct.
do. And that
It's
poor
so true.
business owner is like, what am I supposed to do? I can't make
Yep.
it not rain. So you
Yeah.
can't please everybody. You put your best work out there
Yep.
and you find a way to keep learning from experiences
Yeah.
and moving forward,
Yeah.
right?
You feel that fear and you still do it because that's courage. That is courage. When
Yeah.
you think about like whether or not it's the small things or the large things, the things that the calculated risk to even the confrontational conversations that you're needing to have that feel even scarier sometimes. Like
Yeah.
who you are and like your values and beliefs, how do they lead you or guide you in moving through that fear?
It's a good question. And I think it's even that question is such a great reminder to connect back to
Mhm.
your values and your priorities. And there are going to be those times when you're like, I'm scared to do this thing.
Yep.
I think it's really the right thing to do, but I'm scared for whatever reason. Like for me, I don't worry anymore about posting content or making a video, whatever. Like it doesn't phase me at all, but I still
Yeah.
have issues with like confrontation, right?
Mhm.
For example, earlier today, a few hours ago, a friend of mine is launching this new AI software product for business development. And he
Mhm.
sent it to some friends and like, can you play with this and try it? He's like, it's already been tested. And I played with it for about 20 minutes and it didn't work well at all. It's so many problems. So
Wow.
then I'm like writing him feedback, but I'm hesitating because I don't even like sending someone
Yeah.
constructive feedback. And then I have to remember if he wants this to succeed, he needs this
Correct.
feedback. This is
And
valuable
he
for I'm
asked
not
you for it.
he asked me for it, and
Yep.
and it's not as with most feedback, it's not a condemnation of him. I'm not like, "Hey,
Mhm.
you're an idiot for
Yes.
making this, like,
Right.
go back to your day job or whatever." No, it's like, "I tried this thing, it didn't work the way I intended. Here's what I experienced, and here's where I think you can make it better."
Yeah.
Like, if I'm on his side, I'm very grateful for that feedback, but it's still
Right.
hard for me, and that's where, for things like that, or let's say someone does something that is impacting my family and I think I need to have a conversation with them.
Mhm.
And I'm scared to do it, but that's where I have to you have to come back to the values and be like, okay,
Right.
what's really important in life? Is it
Mhm.
this one micro relationship or is it like the long-term health of our family or
Yep.
achieving these goals or whatever it is? And it doesn't always work out that you talk yourself, but it's the same thing with like, I've talked to many people because obviously my new book is on building a personal brand. I talk to a
Yeah.
lot of people about that idea and people say, well, I want to start sharing content on LinkedIn or something, but I'm scared to do that. And so that's when you got to come back to like, hey, what's the most important thing for you?
Right.
And what are your goals for that? And why do you want to do it? And what's your fear? And of course, everyone's fear is I'm going to put something out there and someone's going to laugh at me and say,
Mhm.
you're an idiot. Why are you,
Yeah.
why are you posting these things?
Right.
And that might happen,
It might.
as we said, but it's highly unlikely.
Mhm.
And if it does, that's not a reason not to do it. It's,
Right.
because on the flip side, you could, like with your book,
Mhm.
yeah, a couple people might not get
Yeah.
value and write bad reviews,
Yeah.
but you have the potential to help a lot of children, a lot of parents. Like
Right.
you're almost doing them a disservice or being selfish if you don't
Ooh.
publish that book and share your knowledge
Yeah.
with them, right? When
Yeah.
you think about it that way, you have something that can help other people.
Yeah.
And just another like micro example, I've always been big into health and fitness.
Mhm.
I used to post a lot more about it. I'd post selfies from
Yeah.
the gym and stuff like that. I don't do it as much anymore. Now it's more cycling stuff. But sometimes certain friends or family members would make
Yeah.
fun of me for it, and I'd be like, maybe I'm being stupid for doing this, right? But
Mhm.
then I'd run into people, or people would send me messages and be like, "Oh, I saw you keep posting for the gym. It reminds me to go, and I've worked out
Right.
more because I saw your stuff. Like, thank you. And I'm like, oh, I did this not because it wasn't for these people that are making fun of me,
Right.
but it helped these other people.
Yeah.
And so I have to keep reminding myself of that, reminding other people of that. We all have value to give.
Yeah.
And if we let the fear hold us back from sharing who we are and sharing our experience and our wisdom, then we're potentially doing a disservice to others.
That's so true. And, like, without moving through that like, you are abandoning your values when you don't move through that fear
Yeah.
into sharing your gifts, your talents, your skills with the world.
Well, I don't think anybody would say that fear is one of their top values, right? But we often
There's a lot of
give
people that
into
live
that.
like it, though.
Well, of course, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's understandable. Like, fear is
Yeah.
a legitimate,
It is.
real
Yep.
feeling, and it even, evolutionarily, of course, it
Mhm.
serves
Oh,
a
totally.
true purpose, right?
Yeah.
Without fear, none of us would be around. We'd all
Yep.
be, we'd all be dead. So,
Yep, we would be. We would be. It's when we let it own us and define us that really takes us outside of our values, that
yeah,
it's no longer I always tell people, like, your emotions they're just your warning light on a dashboard that tells you, like, you're outside your values, something's wrong, like, you're not
yeah,
taking good care of yourself, like, it's just a warning light, and, I mean, there's a
yeah.
lot of people that ignore that warning light for months.
Yeah, and sometimes we get confused, we fear the wrong things, like, for whatever reason,
True.
my dog is terrified of fireworks and loud things that can't actually hurt him, but he will
Right.
walk right into traffic, just right into traffic, and I have to pull him back on the leash, like, "Do you see these cars?" So,
Right.
I try to talk to him, but sometimes you just can't
Mhm.
reason with
Right,
animals.
right. I wa That's a great example, actually, because we all of us humans have some version of that, like, some
Totally.
version of it. Totally.
Yeah,
Like, I had the,
absolutely.
realization the other day, I was like, "Oh, I guess I do still care too much about what people think. Dang it, thought I had dealt
Mhm,
with that." Like,
mhm. And we get these
dang.
opportunities every day. I'm just, like, having this conversation with you, I love this because it makes me think of all. It doesn't have to be big things like publishing good books,
Right.
little things like today.
Yeah.
Okay, I said I moved to Barcelona, right? I'm
Yeah.
still learning Spanish. I don't speak Spanish that well.
Okay.
I went to my gym today. They made some changes in like the entry system and the lockers. And I just wanted to ask a question about how it worked. But I'm like, I'm really scared to ask this question. First of
Yeah.
all, even if I was in the US, I'd still be scared to go bother
Yeah.
somebody and ask a question. Second of all, I don't speak the language very well. And I find that the front desk workers at this place don't really speak much English.
You know,
But
yeah.
I'm like, what is the downside? Like, what is the worst that can
Right.
happen? So I went and asked the question. She answered the question. I mostly understood her answer. And then I went on my way and I felt happy
Yeah.
with myself that I at least tried.
Uh-huh. I love it. That's so good.
Yeah.
When it comes to, like, so living in, because, like, really, you're the what's the title of the new book? Live Your Brand. What is it? I always get it
My new book
backwards.
is Own Your
Yeah.
Brand, Own Your
Own your
Career
brand,
with
own your
Mike
career.
Kim. Yep.
Because, like, that in order to own your brand,
Yeah.
authenticity has to be in there. In order to be authentic, you have to have clarity of your values and who you wanna
Yeah.
be and what your gifts and your talents are that you wanna share with the world, and then obviously work out the muscle to move through the fear to get you there. But when it comes, like, especially when all these big decisions that you've made, all these calculated risk, all the way
Yeah.
down to these little ones that you shared so
Yeah.
far,
Yeah.
it I mean, I think, and you can correct me, like, for me, my brand is just who I am.
Yeah.
Which means I have to have clarity of values. How does that show up
Mm.
though in owning, like, how you serve the world and, like, how you make money?
Mm. So, yeah, I mean, I love what you said there. And in the new book, Own Your Brand, Own Your Career, we have a bunch of questions and exercises you can go through
Love
to
it.
think through your brand. And one of the most important that I do in workshops and in companies with people is that's the question. Who are you today? It starts with that person that self evaluation, and then what do you want to be known for? Right?
Mhm.
Whether it's you want to be known as generous and helpful and kind, or collaborative. Some people say hardworking, high integrity, ethical, reliable, etc. And then maybe you want to be known as an expert in
Yeah.
software development or accounting or tax planning or whatever it is that you do, and you want to be leadership development. You want to be known as an expert in. And then the next question is, are you showing up in alignment with that brand? Right? You've defined your values, like you
Yeah.
said, Justine. You know who you are. And I remember one of the first times I did values exercise, and the way I understood it, because they'll give you a list of like 100
Yeah.
terms, and you're like, well, I like all these things.
I know.
And
That's what I do
and
in mine.
I think the simple answer is, right, like, okay, when it comes down to an important decision, which one are you going to choose, right? And
Yep.
then I think of an example I heard from my friend Christine years ago. I think it was her, Christine DiDonato, who was basically like, you might put health and socializing or something
Yeah.
like that. And when you finish work at 5 o'clock and you're planning to go to the gym, but your friends invite you to happy hour, which one do you choose? There's no wrong answer.
Right.
It just comes down to your values and priorities, right? What's most important to you? So for me, in building a business around, I mean, I'm building a personal brand business as an author, keynote speaker,
Yeah.
trainer. I mean, you're doing something similar, right?
Yeah.
So I need to be really clear on who I am and what I want to portray out into the world. And for me, I want to be known as someone who is generous, helpful, kind, inspiring, motivational, knowledgeable, helpful, energetic. Someone brings a lot of energy to the room.
Yeah.
And we know if we bring Andy in to speak, then he's going to bring a lot of value. He's going to bring a lot of energy. Someone who's, reliable, a good relationship builder, that sort of thing. So I try to show up high energy, try to show up in those ways to everything I do, both in real life
Yeah.
and on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
on Instagram, Facebook, wherever I happen to be. I want to make sure that I'm consistent in all those things. One of my greatest fears, talking about fear, one of my greatest
Yeah.
fears that drives me in all of this is that someone would call me out for being a hypocrite, saying, "Oh, you say this one thing over here, but you don't actually
Yep.
act or
I agree.
live it." And so that has really pushed me to make sure that I'm living in alignment
Yeah.
with my brand, and it's really helped me because if I'm out there teaching about owning your career, owning your
Uh-huh.
life, being intentional, following your dreams, and then I let fear hold me back and I don't move to another country that I've always been wanting to, I don't get
Yeah.
into cycling I've always wanted to, I don't, do XYZ,
Yeah.
then am I living my true values? Am I living in alignment with my brand and what I'm saying? And I want to make sure that I'm practicing what I'm preaching and I'm living by example. And I think we all have an opportunity to do that, whether we have a big
I agree.
platform
Yeah.
or not. We're just speaking in our network, but are we
Mhm.
clear on our values and who we are, the brand we want to portray? Are we living in alignment with that? Are we showing up in alignment with that?
Yeah.
What changes do we need to make?
Mhm.
And yeah, are we practicing what we preach? Are we leading by example?
Right. I love how you put it, like, what do you wanna be known for? Like,
Yeah.
that takes the question of who are you? Who are you? Who do you wanna be? Who were you created to be? What do you wanna show up as in this world and give this world? Like, what do you want to be known as? That deepens the question, I think, for a lot of people.
Hmm. Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely.
That's so good. There is one of the greatest compliments I always it's like one of my, like, "Okay, you are doing it. Okay, Justine." Like, when I step into a room or step off a stage and someone comes up and says something to you and they're just like, "You are exactly like you seem you are online." Like,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that's different is you're way shorter than I expected. And I was like, I hear that a lot. Like, but it's like, yeah,
I haven't met you in person yet, so I don't know. One day,
I know,
hopefully.
right? I am way shorter, but like, it's like, no, that's the whole point. Like, I want you to be your wholehearted, integrated person, self,
Yeah,
everywhere you
yeah,
are, because that's what you deserve and that's what the world needs. So
right.
that's so good. All right. Are you ready for your last two questions? It's already time.
I'm ready. I'm
Okay.
ready.
So the one
I'm
that you,
nervous. I'm nervous, but I'm
I know.
ready.
So the one you technically know is coming is,
Yeah.
when has courage looked differently than you expected? And what did it teach you?
So for better or worse, I'm not very good at preparing for things. So even if I had you told me ahead of time.
I did.
Okay. So when has courage looked differently than I expected? And was there a
What
second
did
part
it
to that
teach
question?
you?
What did it teach me? Um yeah, so I don't know if I could think of an experience where courage really looked different
Mhm.
than I expected, but I do feel like this is I don't know, to me this is like one of the most common things that maybe it's not a big deal for a lot of people, but like I said, when I moved to Barcelona,
Yeah.
I had a bike for a long time, but I decided I really wanted to get into cycling, and I got a gravel bike, and I started riding more and more, and I started off really small, and then joining these groups that were doing these much bigger, harder rides,
Wow.
and anytime I signed up to join them, I was scared that I was going to be, the one in the back holding
Yeah.
people back. And I was quite a few times the person at the back
Right.
by the end of the route, where like
Mhm.
people are waiting for me, like worried about me, but I make it, I make every time I survive and I make it in.
Yeah.
And 2 years into this, I find that I'm just getting stronger and stronger. And yesterday was a Sunday. I went out on a really long ride, 5 hours with a guy that he's
Oh,
older than me, but I really admire. He's a very strong rider. And he was certainly, I was running out of gas towards the end and he was still going strong. 5 hours in, rode 65 kilometers through a lot of hills and mountains and stuff like that. But I'm really proud of how I've grown.
mhm.
And I'm connecting this back to courage because every time I started doing longer, harder rides, I was scared to
Yeah,
go sign up for the group. I'm going on one this week that I'm a little nervous about. And I don't, I don't know if I sat around thinking about, oh, this is really courageous of me,
yeah,
because, we think about
right,
courage.
right.
There's obviously people doing much harder, scarier things in life, than getting on a bike and riding with people. But it does go back. I think one of the interesting things is, we're wired for self-preservation. So
Yes,
it's hard to go do things if you think your body can't handle it, because you're
yep,
like, what if I pass out and die up
right,
there? Right. And I
right.
almost did once over the summer because it was so freaking hot
Oh my gosh.
here. But the other thing is, we're wired for, um, getting along socially with others,
Mhm,
right? And what if
mhm.
I'm holding the group back and I
Yeah,
don't want to be that person? And so I have to overcome that fear
yep,
and say, I'm gonna, you know what? They're all rooting for me. It's
yep,
fine. I would be doing the same.
mhm,
And I do it and I get stronger and better anyway.
yeah,
So I think something like that,
yep,
you don't always think of as this takes courage, but it
right.
does get outside of your
I
comfort
agree.
zone. And I hope that this inspires somebody to go sign up for
Yeah,
some fitness challenge or go for a longer bike ride or
so
whatever.
good.
Something you've been kind of nervous about, but
Yeah,
you've been wanting to do. And I just think it's so cliche to say, but like, life is short. We're all getting older.
yep,
There's some things that we can't even do anymore, but there's a lot of things we
yep,
still can do, but we have a ticking
absolutely.
time,
We do.
clock on it. And another thing that just really drives me in all of this is, I think it's impossible to get to the end of life without regrets. The whole idea
Right,
of no regrets.
right,
It's natural that
right.
we're going to do things, we're going to say
Yep,
stupid things, we're going to have regrets.
absolutely.
But I think all the time about my older self, 80, 90 years old, looking
Yep,
back and wondering, did I live life the way I wanted to live it, or did I hold back? Did I make some mistakes? I'm
exactly.
sure I'll make some mistakes. I know I will.
Yeah,
Right? I've got two kids. I'm gonna make lots of mistakes,
yeah,
but I can use that to guide me and say, for example, a couple weeks ago, I took a day off to go on this really, really hard bike ride, and I was like, oh, I have all this work to do. And then I was like, when I get to the end of my life, am I going to care that I worked one more day or that I did this really hard bike ride
oh,
with these
so
cool
true.
guys? Like, no, I know what I'll appreciate. I'll be glad I did.
Exactly.
I let that
I love
guide me
that.
for a lot of life decisions.
That's such a good perspective. I love it. So good. All right, your last question, your surprise question.
Tries questions.
Yep. What's a
Okay.
time that your courage and your values lined up in a way that shaped your life?
What's a time that your courage and your values lined
Mhm.
up in a way that shaped your life? Well, I'll give you three really quick. So
Okay.
one is leaving the corporate world to start my own business, as go out on my own as a
Yep.
independent speaker, consultant, publish my book, and all that stuff. And that connects to my values because I've really discovered over time that freedom is such a big, and like,
Yep.
independence, autonomy is such a big value for me. It's the reason why, looking back, I had some really bad bosses over the years in jobs, like real jerks, but I also had some good bosses, and I still didn't like having them as bosses because I just didn't like having a boss.
Yeah.
And maybe some people can relate to that, and some people tell me like, "No, I love having a
I
manager."
right.
That's
Right.
cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome. For me, like, independence is a big value. It took a lot of courage to say, I'm gonna, put aside this salary and I'm gonna go try to
Yep.
do things on my own. It might fail. I still feel like every year it takes courage to keep doing that because,
For
as an
sure.
entrepreneur, it's like up and down. You're like,
It
I don't
is.
know how much money I'm gonna make next year. I have no idea,
Yeah.
but I love it. I absolutely love it. It does fit it, like risk taking, independence, autonomy. Those are values for me. So adventure. So
Yeah.
that fits in. Number two, right after I published my book, as I think I was diagnosed with testicular cancer and I had
Yep.
surgery 2 days after I published my book.
Gosh.
And when I was faced with that, anybody would be certainly upset or even scared. I was frustrated, but I had written this book about taking ownership and responsibility. Personal responsibility has become a big value for me as well. It's one that I'm
Yeah.
very, public about. And so I said, I'm not going to be a victim of this. I have to live in alignment with my values. I'm going to take
Right.
ownership of this experience. And so I did research. I read everything I could about health and nutrition and cancer, and I made a lot of changes. And I said, I'm not going to rely on doctors. I'm going to take
Yep.
ownership. And if I'm going to get through this, it's going to be on me.
Yes.
And I absolutely did,
Yeah.
did stuff doctors wanted me to do, like chemotherapy. I did a lot of
Yeah.
naturopathic stuff and
Okay.
changed my diet and everything, and completely healthy today. Testicular cancer is not one of the riskiest, but
Sure.
I think I got through that better because
Yeah.
I took full ownership of it.
Mhm.
And then the third example is moving my family from the US to
Yes.
Spain, just because I had always dreamed of living in Europe. And that to me always felt like something it's cool that other people do, but like I could never do that. Why?
Whoa.
I don't know, because I'm scared,
Yeah.
is the real answer. Like, I just don't think I could do something like that. And then I thought one day, like, well, I believe in following my dreams. I talk to people about following their dreams and goals.
Right.
This is something that I dream about all the time. Like, why not give it a shot? What's the worst that happened? We go and it doesn't work out, and then we come back. Like,
Right.
that's it. And
Right.
so my wife agreed, and we made the move. And there's been challenges, but it's been fun, and I'm so glad we did. And I think it's gone well, and we did it because it did align with our values of,
Right.
adventure and following our dreams and doing things that we want to do.
So good. So good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate you.
My pleasure, Justine. I appreciate you as well.
Um, where can people connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Well, we talked about the two books, Own Your Career, Own
Yep.
Your Life, and Own Your Brand, Own Your Career are both available on Amazon. If you want to do the exercises on personal brand, you can go to ownyourbrandbook.com and download a free digital workbook. And then, of course, you can search for me, Andy Storch, ANDYSTORCH. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place, podcasts, books,
Yep.
social media, you name
Okay.
it. Reach out. Let me know you heard me on
All right.
Justine's podcast, and
Yeah.
let's talk.
All right. Awesome. We'll link it all in the show notes. Thank you, my friend, for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Courage is Built Here podcast. Whether you're brand new to this work or living it out loud every day, I hope today was helpful, hopeful, and a reminder that you're not alone. What one bit of courage will you take from this episode, and how will you walk it out? If this episode encouraged you, share it with a friend, leave us a review, and please make sure you like and subscribe. New episodes come out every Wednesday on your favorite podcast platform and Fridays on YouTube. For more resources, head to JustineFroelker.com and click to my store. Because courage isn't a one-time thing, it's built right here, one small choice at a time, and especially between us.